The most important thing to consider when you are writing a headline is to think like a journalist. Put yourself on the other side of that inbox and think of what a journalist would think when they are receiving your email or when they are reading your pitch. Are they surprised to find out something? Are they interested? Have you invoked an emotional reaction? Have you added something to their piece? Do they react at all? And if not, then it might be worth shifting and changing the headline that you use. A lot of the time, because we are so invested in what we do or invested in the story that we've written, we think that it's very interesting. But it's also important to test it out. Some really easy ways to do this is to show the headline to a bunch of different people at the company, or to put it in a subject line and to press send to yourself and look at it in your inbox. Does it stand out? Or just use headline formulas that have always worked. One of the best ways to create a headline for publication is to look at what the publication actually writes, how it writes it, and then reverse engineer that into your story. So here's a few different types of headlines that tend to work across media landscapes, and then you can use them in whatever context that works best for you. The specific number headline, something like UK workers waste an average of 6.3 hours per week in unnecessary meetings. The headline is shocking, interesting, has a very specific number, which makes the journalist more likely to read the piece. Rankings, which works incredible for local publications. Things like the 10 UK cities where your salary goes furthest in 2025. Something that's very relevant to a lot of people. So if your top city is something that is weird and not expected, that's even better, because you can tailor that to different local publications. So you can pitch different publications across the UK their specific local ranking. And that would be an interesting enough headline for them. The surprising headline. And it usually works better when someone has an assumption and you're breaking that assumption. Something like, remote workers are now putting in more hours than office staff, which is something that breaks the assumption of remote work helps with work-life balance. So if you can actually find that out, then it's a very interesting headline to a journalist to write about, because it's counterintuitive. The versus angle, that tends to work really well between different age groups, different locations. Something like millennials versus boomers, who's really better with money? Because it tackles conversations like older people being able to afford a house and younger people not, and takes it to a different level of, are older people actually better with their money? The revelation headline, which works really well with data pieces or survey pieces. And something like that would be the hidden gig economy, how freelancers are underpaying tax by 1.8 billion per year revealed. This could be a really interesting study because you are revealing a piece of data that is new or a story that people weren't aware of in the past. A warning or an alert headline tends to work really well in a lot of publications. Something like 3 in 4 UK renters are unaware of new tenant rights coming in force next month. And this works because you are actually informing people of something that they were not previously aware of. So one of the ways that you can improve your headline writing is by checking certain headlines across the spectrum, consuming more news, looking at tools like Break the Web and finding different stories and seeing all the different publications that write that story and how they write it. If you go to a tool and find a story like this Anthropic lawsuit, you can find the breakdown of the story and how people are tackling it, and then all of the different articles at the bottom that give you more details on how people have already covered this. And this gives you some insight into how to write. If you're tackling a specific publication, you can go into your LLM of choice, like ChatGPT or Claude, and write the headline and ask it to adjust it according to that specific publication. Writing headlines is one of those skills that you get better at as the more you consume. So the more you read the news, the more you will realize what types of stories work. So if you're running a data story, it might be interesting to type things like data revealed or new study shows into Google and to find different stories that have written this headline and see how they phrase it. It's also very important to A/B test different headlines and see which ones work better. And if one headline doesn't work, repitch your story with a different headline. But the most important thing is you have to avoid these very crucial pitfalls. Your headline cannot be too long because you only have a limited amount of space in an email to write, specifically in the subject line. it can't be too vague. You have to be very specific and very clear with what you are offering the journalist, and it cannot be too branded. If you're writing your subject line the same way you'd write an ad, it is almost guaranteed to tank the story. Make sure it's interesting, make sure that it's newsy, and make sure that you offer the value clearly so that the journalist doesn't have to go digging for the story, because they for sure will not do that. And once you have a really good headline and your story is ready to go, there comes one of the most crucial bits of any PR campaign, which is the distribution. So if you want to learn how to create amazing media lists and know where to distribute your story, you can find our video on this here.